The broadcast is
All right, so we'll run through the weather for this week. Not a lot going on, but maybe just enough. There's a little bit of interest on some of the things that might be causing us some issues here, especially as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. So just kind of jumping right into it. I won't rehash all of the headlines here. The main thing we'll be focusing on is that we are getting into a period of some fairly dry conditions Tuesday and Wednesday, and that may actually result in a increased threat of wildfires. And we'll talk about that a little bit. On the other side, on the marine side, with that wind, we are expecting small craft advisory conditions really later to tonight and really through most of Tuesday. So pretty windy out there. And northwest winds could get up to about 30 knots, maybe even 34 knots out there on the bay. So maybe a little bit of a period of wind here as we get through Tuesday and Monday night and into a little bit of Tuesday. And then we'll get a little bit of break in the weather and then maybe some more fronts coming for the weekend. So we'll talk about that as well. So just kind of looking ahead to the frontal passages and kind of the timing of weather, I'll kind of move this over here. It's a little bit easier to use the WPC website. This morning, we actually did have a little weak front push through. Y'all may have seen a few little scattered showers, isolated showers over southeast Virginia, northeast North Carolina with this weak little front that's kind of pushed through. We do have a pretty good little northwest wind, starting to gradually increase. The cold air surge, you see the high pressure here is still over the upper central part of the U.S. and it's pushing east. And as it pushes east, we are going to get a little bit of a surge of some colder air still. So even though the front's pushed offshore, there is still a cold air surge that's going to be coming in later tonight and tomorrow. So we get into later this afternoon, you almost see like a little secondary front trying to push through, maybe in a little bit of snow way to our northwest. And that cold air is starting to kind of approach from our northwest. And so by the time we get into this evening, that cold air is going to be starting to arrive, going to bump up the winds a little bit for tonight and through tomorrow. So that gives us those small craft advisory conditions just below gales. So going to be pretty breezy, and it's going to be breezy everywhere, even across the mountains. The mountains are a little bit breezy today, and they're going to be breezy again tomorrow. And we'll talk more about that. Getting into tomorrow night, you really see that pressure gradient, those isobars, those lines of equal pressure kind of tight right across the mid-Atlantic. So that's going to be that pretty good north wind. And notice it's really affecting the whole state. So pretty good breeze, pretty good windy conditions, really from the mountains all the way to the coast. Most folks are going to be seeing winds of maybe 20, 25 miles an hour. Gust, the mountains could see some higher gusts getting up to maybe 35 miles an hour, could be a gust to 40 somewhere. And along the bay, along the coast, we're going to be seeing winds in miles an hour, right around, I'd say 30, 35 mile an hour wind gust along the coast. And this is going to be for late tonight and through tomorrow. This is a snapshot of what the weather map will look like just after midnight tonight. And you see that tight pressure gradient. Tomorrow morning, notice how that gradient still exists. We still have those tight lines across Virginia, especially the eastern parts of Virginia. And so this is going to keep the wind going. It's also that north wind also going to be continuing with some dry conditions, which we'll talk about. Tomorrow evening, again, you see kind of the high sliding to the south. The wind starts to become more west. Not as strong, but still going to be a little bit of a breeze, even as we get into Wednesday. Just kind of be this westerly breeze, going to be a warmer breeze with the high to our south. And you see another cold front starting to push down across West Virginia. They'll be coming through here later on Thursday, kind of reinforcing the cold air. You see it's blasted offshore by Thursday morning. We get into Friday. Now you see another, maybe a wave of low pressure forming here somewhere off the coast of Florida. That may start to work its way up the coast and may start to bring us some rain for Friday night into Saturday, especially I'd say 95 east. We'll see the best chances of rain as we get into, I'd say, Friday night and into the weekend. So we might be kicking off the weekend with a little bit of a weak coastal storm that's going to move up and maybe bring us some rain to the eastern part of the state. Not going to be a big storm, but enough to maybe bring us some rain. So that's what it looks like in the bigger picture. When we're looking at some of the overall weather pattern. Let me go on to the next slide here. So this is one of the things we're mainly concerned about. This is probably the biggest story right now this week is going to be the increasing fire danger. We're really getting into tomorrow and then especially on Wednesday. So you see the overview there, northwest winds gusting to 30 miles per hour with the humidity in the afternoon getting pretty dry, about 15 to 25%. The fine fuels, leaf litter, things like that are getting pretty dry. They haven't had a lot of real heavy rainfall lately, and those fine fuels dry out pretty quick. So we're going to be kind of keeping an eye on that. We're already coordinating with the forest services on potential what we call headlines, fire danger days, as well as a fire weather warning. So we're working on that now. We are basically, we remind folks, we are in that burn ban right now, so no open burning before 4 p.m. Daily. And what I'll show you is this is actually a system called Hot, Dry, Windy. It's one of the things that we use to try to assess what the fire danger might be on any given day. And this is for tomorrow. And granted, it's not showing a lot of risk tomorrow, but you're seeing some of these little areas starting to kind of highlight in red. We are going to put out what we call an increased fire danger statement for tomorrow, basically letting folks know that the breeze is going to be picking up. It's going to be windy. It's going to be dry to the point where we could see a few little wildfires, cropping up, or if folks aren't controlling, any kind of open flame, could be a little bit of an issue tomorrow. We do think it's going to be a little bit worse than what this is showing. This is just kind of showing some little bullseyes there of red across the state where we could see a little bit of fire danger. Notice Eastern Shore, even Northeast North Carolina, get into a little bit more of that red threat. That is for Tuesday, but then what I'll do is I'll zoom out and we'll go look at Wednesday, and you'll notice the Wednesday threat is much more significant. We do have a pretty significant fire danger really across the entire region. Notice it even gets up into Maryland, Eastern Shore, down to here Northeast North Carolina, most of the Commonwealth. And so Wednesday is the day that we're kind of looking at where we're going to see the highest level of fire danger this week. So tomorrow it increases, and tomorrow kind of dries things out a little bit, dries out the leaf litter, especially for Wednesday. So we are looking at a potential what we call a red flag warning for Wednesday. We're coordinating with the Forest Service, and we're going to be issuing a red flag watch most likely today for Wednesday, and upgrading that to a red flag warning tomorrow afternoon for Wednesday. Really worried about that Wednesday time period where things are going to be still breezy and going to be very, very dry. And so that's the way things are kind of zeroing in. The threat does linger a little bit into Thursday. Not as bad as Wednesday, but things will be very dry. Still going to be a little bit breezy, but not as windy as Wednesday. So Thursday, we probably still will see an increased fire danger day on Thursday. But again, Wednesday looks like the peak day. That looks like that's the day right now we are the most concerned about in the forecast. So that's probably the biggest thing that we're working on this week is just the fire danger. It is that time of year, and the peak does look like it's going to be middle of the week on Wednesday of this week. So looking at the rainfall, obviously, I just told you it's going to be dry, so we're not expecting much rainfall at all. It could be a few little isolated, widely scattered showers this evening. You see really limited there to, south side, southeast Virginia, south side Hampton Roads, northeast North Carolina. Could be just a few little isolated showers, not much to even worry about. If you see one, great. Most likely you won't. And so most of the area stays dry. The good news is looking a little further out in time, when we start looking at that Friday night into Saturday time frame here, the image on the right, it does show you, it looks like we could get a little bit of a good soaking rain as we get into late Friday and especially into Friday night, Saturday. Especially, I'd say, 95 east. The mountains are probably going to miss out. So the western part of the state's not going to see a lot of moisture, which can, cause real concerns with fire threat later on. But it does look like across central Virginia and especially eastern Virginia, Maryland, northeast North Carolina, we're going to see at least a little bit of a decent soaking. So that'll be a good news for the fire threat, and maybe at least for a little while, get those fine fuels a little bit moist to kind of help negate any kind of issues we might see, in the near term after next weekend. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, we put out the kind of the regional summaries here across the area, is what the local temperatures are going to be and the chance of precip. The main thing I want to highlight too is notice that the low temperatures Tuesday morning, pretty cold across the area. Farmville, Gloucester getting below 30, Newport News even getting down to 39. So a little bit of a freeze and a frost here, getting basically for tonight and Tuesday morning. Going to be pretty cold. Notice there's another cold shot a little bit later in the week on Thursday. You're starting to see some temperatures there. Lake Monticello towards Louisa getting down to 31, Mechanicsville 35. So could be a little bit of frost this week, maybe even a little bit of freezing temperatures come tomorrow morning. So, we know that some folks may have put some plants out. They're going to want to bring that kind of stuff in. Really not seeing any growing yet going on. So the growing season really hasn't kicked off. But we are, after a warm round of temperatures, we are seeing, a normal cold snap. That's going to be kind of going on this week with this series of cold fronts that are going to be pushing through. And again, you notice mainly that rain coming in late Friday. It says Friday, 12 p.m., But this is probably going to be mainly, I'd say, more like late afternoon, and then into Friday night, and then the rain chances continue into Saturday. So really dry for most of the week everywhere, outside of some really isolated showers this evening, and that's just only 15 to 20% chance, maybe 30 across North Carolina, chance of rain this evening. So it's not going to amount to really much of anything. Switching gears into the marine, on the left here, we're expecting small craft advisory conditions. You see all the waters are red, meaning that it's a high probability of small craft advisory conditions. The middle image is the probability that we might see gale force winds of 34 knots or greater. It's not zero, but it's pretty low. I mean, we may see some wind gusts getting close to 34. Notice how the winds may kind of rush down the bay. So very low probability of gales, and we're not forecasting gale conditions, but we are forecasting wind gusts maybe upwards of about maybe 30 to 34 knots, especially tonight and tomorrow morning with that wind rushing down the Chesapeake Bay. But overall, expecting small craft advisory conditions. So those small craft advisory conditions are actually expected later this evening. That's why you see Monday night highlighted all orange. So that's our small craft advisory conditions. A little bit of red there right near the mouth of the bay where we could see some gusts of 34 knots, or right close to 34 here in the southern bay, maybe right out here going out the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. Small craft advisory conditions really extend through most of Tuesday. That's why you see the orange here for Tuesday. I'm expecting those conditions to persist. Things do improve a little bit as we get into Wednesday, but then Thursday, again, small winds pick back up behind that front. We get small craft advisory conditions again on the bay Thursday and Thursday night, and then it's still a little bit breezy here as you get into Friday. But the most of the wind should be really tonight and into tomorrow as far as the strongest winds on the waters. And this shows you the peak winds here over the next 72 hours. So again, just like we were talking generally about peaking out around 30 to 33 knots, maybe getting close to 34 knots, lower bay, near the mouth of Chesapeake Bay. And this will be a north to northwest wind that'll be kicking in a little bit stronger later this evening, overnight, and into tomorrow. And of course, that's going to build the waves up to about anywhere from 3 to 5 feet on the bay, and getting up to about maybe 7 feet or so, 5 to 7 as you push out offshore into the coastal waters. And again, those worst conditions really should be later tonight and through Tuesday, and improving a little bit on Wednesday. And then the winds do pick back up again later this week with those next couple of cold fronts. So this is just kind of showing you, if you download the briefing, you'll be able to see this, the wind direction and the peak winds. So you can kind of see here tonight those winds increase, continue a little bit into Tuesday, become more of that southwest, weaken a little bit on Wednesday, stay a little bit breezy, and then we get that next front. Winds go back northwest on Thursday, pick back up again, a little bit of a decrease in the winds on Friday. But then we have the coastal low moving up the coast Saturday, and you see those northeast winds pick up once again. So a little bit of an up-down roller coaster there on the marine, with the winds kind of going up and down. But it does not look like we're going to see gale conditions. Everything stays small craft advisory conditions. So we're not expecting gales this week. Looking ahead, going through the 8 to 14 day outlook, it looks like temperatures will be, maybe near normal to maybe slightly above normal. Once we get past this cool snap this week, looking ahead, later into the weekend and next week, normal to maybe slightly above normal temperatures is what we are maybe expecting, but continued maybe above normal rainfall. So even though it's dry this week, this above normal rainfall is really kind of being driven by that coastal low coming up the coast later this weekend, and maybe some chances of rain next week. We'll see how that plays out. But they're saying the probability of being a slightly above normal precipitation over the next 14 days is favored versus being dry. So we'll see how that plays out. And so with that, again, that's just the highlights from this week, really where our main focus is the small craft advisories on the ocean and the bay, and especially this fire danger threat that's going to increase tomorrow, really peak on Wednesday. That's going to be our worst fire danger day. And then the fire danger day will still linger a little bit into Thursday. And so, talking about Wednesday with the fire danger, going to be concerned with people like, throwing, anything that could be a source of ignition, so along the interstates, highways, folks throwing things out the window, cigarettes, things like that might be sources of ignition, any kind of open flame, any type of burning that is happening, the construction, things like that those are always concerns. Backpacking, folks in the backcountry, anything that could cause an open flame on Wednesday could get a fire going. So that's one of the things we want to be really leery of. And with that, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.